I was home alone on a Tuesday afternoon in January, bored and hungry, so I left to grab a sandwich. The shop was a 5-minute drive. It took me 10 minutes to order and get my sub, and then the 5-minute drive home. I was gone for such a short period of time I hadn't bothered to turn the TV off. When I unlocked the front door, I immediately noticed that my dog was outside and that our sliding glass door was ajar, and I instinctively went to let her in when it hit me that I hadn't put her outside, and I definitely hadn't left the sliding door open. In another wave, I realized I was home alone. I would like to say that I was brilliant and got out of the house while calling the police, but instead I grabbed the largest knife I could find and called my best friend, who was at school and couldn't have done anything anyway. I peeked under beds and in closets, but there was no one, and to the naked eye, nothing looked out of place. From there, I called my dad and told him I thought someone had broken in. When he got there, we checked every inch of the house. Only 2 things were missing: a valuable ruby ring that belonged to my great-grandmother, and my senior portrait that hung in the hallway. Police were called, a report was filed, and the cop who half-assed dusting for prints told us to look at pawn shops for the ring, and left. That was it. And I slept fitfully for a week or more, panicking over this person who now had a massive photo of me. Winter and spring came and went, and before I knew it, it was July. I started volunteering at a swim camp for kids, and had put the weird break-in behind me almost completely. On August 5th, I remember because it was a birthday of a friend, one of the youngest campers ran up and told me there was a stranger standing by the fence. I asked her to show me where the stranger was and told my boss that I'd be right back. The changing rooms of this pool are set up like little tents because we had so many campers, and right next to the tents was a huge grizzly of a man. I'm 5'11", this guy was easily 6'7". He had a long beard and frizzled hair, an emaciated face with a protruding gut. I could smell him before I could see him, and I assumed immediately that he was just a homeless man wishing he could go swimming or maybe just wandering by. "Sir, I'm sorry, but you can't be here," I started. He just grinned at me. He was missing all of his front teeth and 2 of the bottom ones, so it looked like he had a capital T in his mouth. "Sir, honestly, you can't stand here. We are a swimming camp for children, and I'm gonna have to insist you leave." I stood firm, waiting for him to walk away. He didn't. He kept smiling. "Sir, do you speak English?" I didn't really know what to do if he wouldn't leave. He wasn't on private property, the swimming center didn't have security to speak of, and I didn't know how to say, "Hey man, you're creepy as fuck," without him lunging at me. He smiled at me for maybe 20 more seconds before he whispered, "You're so much prettier than your photo." I ran. I'm proud to say I didn't freeze, I didn't scream, I just hauled ass to the other side of the pool, grabbed my cell phone, and called the police. I watched him walk back into the woods. By the time the police got there, he was long gone. I gave them my statement and described him, and I believe they scoped out some of the homeless centers nearby to look for him, but nothing has come of it yet. I am told it is still an open investigation. Since this incident, I am on constant alert. I've begun looking for a new apartment in a different city, and I carry pepper spray on me at all times. But what haunts me is, he's still out there, and he still has that photo of me, smiling and 18 forever. This all occurred when I was a freshman in college. I had a late start moving into the dorm, since freshmen always moved in last, and move-in times were posted alphabetically. I moved in on Saturday around 4. I met my roommate, a sophomore studying to be a vet, and once I settled in, there was a floor meeting. I honestly did not want to go, since I was tired from lugging things up 8 flights of stairs all day. It was mandatory, however, so I showed up. That is when I met her. I honestly don't remember her name, but for the sake of this story, we will call her Sarah. Sarah was my floor buddy since she was a junior in a similar field of study. She was majoring in healthcare administration. I was, and still am, studying medical and clinical laboratory sciences. We talked for a little bit, and when the meeting was over, I left. I will admit, I did not leave my room that often, aside from class or to get food. I didn't have a lot of friends, and I was more of a homebody anyway. Well, Sarah picked up on that. She started showing up at night to hang out. At first it was welcomed, but then it started to get creepy. She started following me to class. I figured maybe she had a different class in the same building. By the end of class, she was waiting at the door for me. I figured that she had a class in that room after I did. This was not the case. She would follow me to our student union and would invite herself to have lunch with me. Sarah would joke around that I was her girlfriend now and she wanted to take care of me, buy me food, stuff like that. I told her I wasn't into that sort of thing, and since I had a meal plan, I didn't need her help. She seemed to take great offense to that, and played it off like she was joking the whole time. A thing to mention, Sarah was not one to joke around. She was one of those people who was serious all the time, and would tell people to stop being childish if jokes were made. She continued following me to class and waiting for me afterward. I would always make up some excuse or use alternate exits to avoid her. I guess she picked up on that and left me alone. I thought it was over. A few weeks from when I started to avoid her, I had friends over to my dorm to watch a movie and just hang out. I did not invite Sarah over for this. About halfway through the movie, there was a knock at the door. We had ordered a pizza, but they would have called since delivery crews are not allowed to go upstairs, and the only way to get up was with a card. I didn't look through the peek hole, which was a huge mistake. There was Sarah. She did not ask to come in and join us, she just waltzed inside and sat down on the futon. She talked through the rest of the movie, asking what was going on and what she had missed. We were all fairly annoyed with her, so I asked my roommate to kick her out. She did, and the rest of the night was all right. After that incident, she would stop by my dorm nearly every night to see if I was there. I would pretend I was not there. I would sit in the darkness with my phone and lamp as my only light. She would knock at the door for half an hour or more before quitting. Sarah asked my roommate for my schedule, when pretending not to be home worked. My roommate gave her my schedule. There was no way to pretend anymore. She would show up every night and hang out in our room and try to talk to me and get my attention. I would blatantly ignore her. One night, she had brought me to my breaking point. I had a very rough day. I was tired and in a very bad mood. It was around 7 when she showed up with candy and a dinner from the little store in our building. I had enough. I shouted at her to leave me alone and then locked her out of my room. She knocked for hours until finally leaving. The rejection only made Sarah angry and very clingy. On the walk to class, she would practically run to catch up with me and try to take my hand in hers. I told her to get the fuck away from me, and if she tried any of this shit again, I would call the police. I want to say she stopped. I want to say she left me alone, but she didn't. It was the start of my second semester. I hadn't seen or heard from Sarah in about a month or so. I figured she was done with her obsession with me and moved on to something else. My roommate had moved out after I found out she had been stealing cash and other belongings from me. I had the room to myself, which was great. But this brought on a lot of problems with Sarah. Since I no longer had a roommate, she kept applying to become my new roommate. They never went through with it since my RA knew we did not get along and fought all the time. With my room right next to hers, shouting at all hours of the night, it would not be ideal for anyone. Still, she would try to be my roommate and my friend. She continued to show up at the door. I would ignore her and make sure the door was locked. I was paranoid about someone breaking in, and I guess I had a right to be. I got home from one of my classes more exhausted than usual. My door was closed, but I had forgotten to lock the door before I crashed on the futon and fell asleep. I woke up, and I felt a hand going through my hair. There she was, creepily caressing my head as I slept. I screamed, and she ran out of the room. My RA showed up since she heard me scream, and I explained the situation to her. The police were called, but I decided not to press charges. That was a big mistake. A month later, I started dating my boyfriend. Since I had the room to myself and he had a roommate, he would come over frequently. I guess this struck a nerve with Sarah. She would start writing things at my door like slut, whore, cheater, and more. She would actively try to tell my boyfriend I was cheating on him with her, and all sorts of lies to get us to break up. It didn't work, and we started hanging out at his place more often. When I was at my dorm and aware of her presence, she would call over her boyfriend. I knew the guy as the dorm's player. 2 of the girls on my floor warned me about him, that he's only interested in sex. So I knew that she was faking it to make me jealous. It wasn't working, which made her angry. I heard from my RA she would still stand outside my door and knock. She would shout angrily at my door, calling me different names. She would try to break into my dorm. I had enough of that. I called the police and filed a restraining order against her. I explained to them everything she had done and even had my friends to defend my story. She was kicked out of the dorm and had to move across campus. For a while, I would still get letters from her. Some were filled with anger and called me a whore for cheating on her. Others begged me to take her back. I'm still not sure what delusional world she was living in, where we were in a relationship, and I don't think I want to know. I'm about to graduate in spring, and I haven't heard or seen Sarah since. I hope it stays that way. Sarah, let's not meet again. I've only told this story to my boyfriend, and he suggested writing about it might help. It's really hard for me to think about, even harder to talk about. I'm hoping putting my story out there instead of holding it in will help me move on. This occurred when I was 14. I'm 21 now. It was October, and my family was at a campground in Vermont for a long weekend. My family is Native American, and it was the 2nd year in a row that we had gone to this particular powwow, which is a native gathering. This one is open for anybody to come, native or not, during the day. We brought a camper because it was cold that time of year, especially with the wind coming off of the lake. Anyway, it was the first day of the powwow, and I walked from my campsite to the clearing where the drumming and dancing would be, in my regalia, my traditional Native American dress. When I got there, I saw my father talking to a man who was also in regalia, but I didn't recognize him. The second he saw me approach, he started watching me in a way that weirded me out. I was instantly uncomfortable with the way he looked at me, but I was raised to see the best in people, so I ignored it. Within seconds of meeting me, he asked me to tie these leather bracelets around his wrists. I got the impression that he asked me to do this instead of my father, so that I would have to touch him. But I did it despite this feeling. As the morning went on, I felt him watching me everywhere I went. At one point, he came up to me and said he'd seen my picture from the year before, and that he knew it was me from my dress, which was, in fact, unique, and my hair. Note that I'm adopted by a Native American family, and I have red hair and snow-white skin, so I tend to make an impression at these gatherings based on how I look. He told me he came because he saw the picture. This gave me a twisted feeling in my gut. He saw my picture the year before and came this year to see if I was here again? I was pretty innocent and naive back then, but this just screamed bad news to me. I started avoiding him as best I could. He went from watching me to following me over the next 2 days. It got to the point where I wouldn't even walk back to my camper alone because he had followed me there once already. Everywhere I turned, there he was. Following me turned into making me dance with him. There's a lot of dancing at these gatherings, and it is disrespectful to refuse, especially to your elder, so I complied. At the end of the day, I started to leave to go back to my campsite, and he stepped in front of me, grabbed my face, and pressed his forehead and nose to mine, like an intimate moment between a couple in love. Picture a Nicholas Sparks movie poster, only against my will. I felt so disgusted being touched by him, and held like that I missed the first part of what he said to me. I was too busy thinking about grabbing my decorative knife from my waist and stabbing him in one of those creepy eyes that told me exactly what he wanted. And if his eyes didn't already spell it out, the fact that he wanted me in a way no middle-aged man should ever want a 14-year-old girl, he practically told me. He said, "I'll be missing you tonight," and then he let me go. I almost threw up right then, from panic. Honestly, I don't remember why I didn't tell my parents that I thought he was going to try to rape me, because I did think that. I was certain. But with my family, I thought I would be safe. They knew something was up, though, because that night they asked if the man had tried to hurt me. I said no, because it was true, but I didn't go to sleep that night. Terror and panic kept me awake. That and the feeling I was being watched. I felt like the man was right outside the camper. It was my intuition that kept me awake. I just knew that if I closed my eyes, something bad would happen. I kept thinking I heard sounds at the window and by the door. I told myself it was my fear making me imagine things. And then I heard the jiggle of the lock being picked. I knew this was real. This was not in my head. The soft pop of the lock giving way, and a small breeze from outside told me that this was actually happening. My panic choked me so much that what would have been a blood-curdling scream from my mom was a strangled cry. I told her that he was here, that he popped the lock. She tried to ignore me in favor of sleep and say it was just a dream, but my terror alarmed her and she went to the door. Sure enough, the door was open, swinging in the breeze. The man was long gone because of my immediate scream for help. My mom told my dad what happened, and we relocked the door, but I don't think anyone slept. The next morning, no one talked about it, and the man was nowhere to be seen. No police were called, which was shocking to me because my dad was an ex-army guy and a current cop. If anyone could have followed up on the guy, it was him. I've always wondered if he and my older brothers had taken matters into their own hands. Everyone knew about it, but nothing was said. Ever. It's been 7 years, and it's never been brought up. I always wonder what would have happened if I hadn't had a gut feeling that kept me awake. We were all heavy sleepers. I never would have heard the lock being picked. I always wonder what his plan was after getting in the camper. He couldn't get to just me without having to deal with my family. My boyfriend thinks that the only thing a guy that determined could have done at that point was kill us in our sleep and do what he wanted with me. A dark part of me hopes that my dad and brothers did do something about it, and that the sick bastard is at the bottom of that lake, but they are good people and would never do that. He's caused me years of lasting trauma and terror that I can't escape. To this day, I obsessively check locks before going to bed. I avoid looking out the peephole, terrified of what I'll see on the other side of the door, waiting for me. I've gone so far as to check the closets when I'm in my apartment alone. I don't know what I expect to find, but I always have to check for him anyway. It's been 7 years, and because I never knew what happened after that night, I still fear him. He waited a whole year to find me at that powwow, obsessively stalked me for 2 days, and then disappeared. So, to my stalker, potential rapist, and maybe murderer, if you aren't rotting away at the bottom of the lake, and you're still out there? Let's not meet.